Hello everybody and welcome to this French GCSE and iGCSE tutorial video. In this particular video, we are going to look at the dictation task, which is an important element of the listening paper for certain exam boards for the exams from 2026. This is, of course, relatively new, um, and it is only there for some exam boards. So we're going to look at how you can maximize your marks when answering this dictation task. Firstly, my name's Dhananjay Talwar, and I studied French and Italian for my MA at the University of Cambridge, graduating back in 2015, so a while ago now. I've been in the field of education since that time, mostly as a tutor, and I've learnt more than 20 languages myself to different levels, of course, but that includes at least 9 of them to fluency. So it is something that I'm hugely passionate about and a real hobby of mine too. And I love enthusing my students and giving them the techniques to learn languages too, and helping them to reach their goals and target grades. And so far, I've done this with more than 500 different students, helping them achieve or exceed their target grade for French GCSE or iGCSE as a full-time tutor. I've been a full-time tutor for over 6 years now. I have taught other languages, of course, too. About 8 of them so far to GCSE and iGCSE level, and several of those at higher levels too. So this is a look at the French GCSE and iGCSE exam boards. As of July 2025, there are 4 listed here for GCSE French and 2 for iGCSE French. You should be aware of your exam board as early as possible, ideally, as there can be differences between the different exam boards. However, for the listening paper, there is actually a reasonable amount of overlap across exam boards. In general, of course, there is quite a lot of overlap. Today's video, though, is focused on the dictation task. And the dictation task is, as mentioned, something quite new and which only exists for 2 exam boards, which are AQA and Pearson Edexcel GCSE. So if you're studying one of those 2 exam boards, then this is very relevant and useful for you. But if you're doing any of the other exam boards, then this video will not be relevant for you. So AQA and Pearson Edexcel GCSE have introduced this dictation task as part of their listening exams for the exams starting from 2026. What actually is the dictation task? Well, as I mentioned, it's something quite new. And for that reason, we do not have perhaps as much information or past papers available to use as practice. I know this can be a cause for concern for many students and parents. We do still have some sample materials available, and I really recommend looking at the websites of those exam boards because both of them have released some suitable sample materials to use as practice too. So the dictation task itself is a task that only exists for certain exam boards, currently for AQA and Pearson Edexcel GCSE. And it takes place towards the end of the listening exam. In fact, in general, it's the last part of the listening paper. What it consists of is during the dictation task, the student has to, they will hear an audio of sentences spoken in French by a native speaker, pronounced quite clearly, of course, and obviously the speed will be slowed down to make it appropriate for this level. And the student will have to transcribe what they hear. So that could be either a full sentence, usually it would be a full sentence, or just individual words that complete the sentence. There are variations, of course, depending on the tier, so whether you're doing foundation or higher tier, and depending on your exam board as well. So make sure you're aware of those details. This requirement to only fill in individual words of a sentence, that is there for Pearson Edexcel GCSE for their foundation tier, I believe. That is not currently part of AQA. Okay, here are some tips for how to tackle the dictation task. So try to prepare for the dictation task by listening to French as much as you can. And the audio that you hear in French for the dictation task will be spoken by natives, so-called native speakers of the language. Many students may be concerned that because French is such a widely spoken language throughout the world, you may have to get used to different accents. However, they almost always will choose um, French native speakers with French accents from France. And they will have quite standardized accents too. No regional variations to make it appropriate and useful for students of this level. So you don't have to worry about coming across, say, Canadian French, for instance, which it can be very different. Um, of course, the speed of the dictation will be slower than regular speech. It won't be a native speaker speaking at full pelt, which would be very difficult. So if you can, then try and practice listening to French and get used to hearing French spoken at that speed, particularly by native speakers, if possible. It may be harder to find material that is spoken by native speakers of French, but at a somewhat slower speed. You can, of course, use the sample materials provided by both of these exam boards, AQA and Pearson at Excel too. But it can also be useful, as mentioned here, to train your ear to get used to hearing French in general as much as you can, and even using harder material. That could be films, could be music. These things are typically aimed at natives, and they will certainly be harder to understand and more testing, but they are fun, enjoyable, and even if you use those, including, say, films with subtitles, they can still be very useful because you're still helping your ear to get used to hearing French. And usually it is simply a case of practice. There is not a huge amount of exam technique that goes into the dictation task itself. As you practice more and more, you should ideally get used to listening to French and become better at identifying where one word ends and the next word starts, which can be tricky at first. And you should also get more and more used to the sound symbol correspondences. So that is the last point here. Of course, as you listen to this French, try and, if you can, transcribe it and write out the French that you hear, because that's what you'd have to do in your dictation task. Sound symbol correspondences refer to the sounds made by certain letters or letter combinations. French is not a phonetic language, which means that French is not written exactly how it is pronounced, which of course makes it harder. English is likewise not a phonetic language, but other commonly learned languages such as Spanish and Italian are. That means that it's likely to take you more practice as a student to get used to being able to write out what you hear in French correctly. And it's important to bear that in mind too. Sound symbol correspondences would include, for example, the fact that GN is pronounced gne. A double L in French can often be pronounced like a y sound, although not always. H is always silent in French, and so on. So getting used to these sound symbol correspondences will really help. Okay, now I am going to show you an example dictation task. Actually, this is taken from the sample material, of course, for Pearson at Excel for their foundation tier. I'm going to play this for you just now. And yeah, you will see that for this particular question, this sample question, you just have to fill in individual words. So for Pearson at Excel, they don't necessarily ask you to fill in a whole sentence. And you will hear everything 3 times. So for the dictation, that's important to remember too. You'll hear everything 3 times. And for AQA as well, the second time you hear it, it would not be the entire sentence. It would be broken down at once. It would be broken down into smaller chunks, which can make it a bit easier as well. So here we're looking just at question 1, though, for the example. So you've got to fill in 2 words. Each of those gaps would be filled by an individual word. Okay, I will play this and then reveal the answer afterwards. So listen out to this.
Sentence 1. Ma famille aime la musique. Ma famille aime la musique. Ma famille aime la musique.
Okay, so that was question one. Here, hopefully, you should have heard and understood and had a go writing down the two words that would go into the gap, one each. Um, so I will reveal the answer now. The answer was, of course, Ma famille aime la musique. This was, yeah, you'll notice that this was the first question in the dictation section, and it's for foundation tier as well. So it is somewhat slowed down. And the words themselves are more common words that hopefully all GCSE students should know. Yeah, so I would bear that in mind as well. Okay, so now we're going to continue with a second example dictation task. This one is fairly similar, but for higher tier and taken from an AQA paper instead. So the other exam board that has a dictation task as part of their listening exam. I will read out these instructions first. You'll notice here, of course, that they're looking for the full sentence. So you'd have to write out the entire sentence. Currently, AQA does not ask you to just fill in individual words at all. So it says you will now hear 5 short sentences. Listen carefully and using your knowledge of French sounds, write down in French exactly what you hear for each sentence. You will hear each sentence 3 times, the first time as a full sentence, the second time in short sections, and the third time again as a full sentence. Use your knowledge of French sounds and grammar to make sure that what you have written makes sense, and check carefully that your spelling is accurate. Yeah, it's important to note that you will hear it 3 times for every sentence that you hear in the dictation task. You'll hear that thrice. There are marks available for the way in which you convey the meaning as well. So obviously, you should try and check that your spelling is accurate and make sure you do that carefully too. But there are marks for the meaning itself too. So just trying to convey the correct meaning can be very beneficial and score you marks. Okay, so I'm going to play this. Here we're actually looking just at sentence 3. And this is higher tier, so the speed is a bit harder and the difficulty level in general. Okay, so that was sentence 3. Hopefully, you were able to hear that and to write down what you thought you heard. Okay, so I will reveal the answer now. This is, of course, certainly harder. We're writing out the full sentence rather than individual words, and the sentence itself is more challenging. So this was the answer for sentence 3. You can see that below. Il faut dire aux enfants de manger sain. We must tell children to eat healthily, essentially. So spelling and all does matter, of course. And yeah, you should certainly practice that as well. Although just conveying the meaning of the sentence can still get you credit. Okay, now time for just a quick quiz to test your understanding of this dictation task. So, first of all, how can you practice for the dictation task? I'll give you a bit of time to think before showing the answer. Okay, this is the answer here. So you can practice basically by listening to as much French as possible of the appropriate level and by getting used to writing out what it is that you hear. That's the best way, training your ear as much as you can. That's the best way of practicing for the dictation task. Okay, question 2 is true or false. Those speaking the sentences in the dictation task will always be native speakers. Is it true or is it false? Okay, I will give the answer now. So this is true. The sentences spoken in the dictation task will always be spoken, pronounced by native speakers. So ideally, you should practice by familiarizing yourself with French as spoken by natives, particularly how it's spoken, the standard accent from France, because that is what will come up in your listening exam. Yeah, it's not going to be as beneficial to focus on other accents at all. And yeah, remember that it will not be a native speaker speaking at full speed either. Okay, question 3 is also true or false. The dictation task is new and therefore no sample materials exist at all. I'll give you a bit of time to think through the answer before I show what it is. Okay, then let me reveal this answer now. So this is false, actually. The dictation task is quite new for AQA and Pearson Edexcel GCSE only, and for the exam starting from 2026. But there are sample materials that are available on the websites of these exam boards, actually, published by both AQA and Pearson Edexcel, which can be used for practice. And these are potentially precious resources too. Um, so I definitely recommend having a look at those. There are certainly fewer materials to use for these elements of the exams that are new for AQA and Pearson Edexcel GCSE, such as the dictation task and the speaking aloud task as well, which is part of the speaking exam. Okay, and question 4, lastly. So is the dictation task marked only based on the accuracy of your transcription? I'll give you a bit of time to think over that. Okay, let me show you the final answer. So the answer to this is no, there are marks available for conveying the sense or meaning of the audio you have heard as well. So even if you're not sure of the exact word that you've heard or how to spell the exact word you've heard, if you try and come up with a synonym or something that conveys the meaning, a similar meaning in some way, you could still get marks. Yeah, there will, of course, be marks available for the accuracy of your transcription, how correct it is grammatically, even in terms of the spelling. But just bear in mind that you get marks for conveying the correct meaning of what you've heard as well. Okay, so if you have any questions or you'd like more information about more personalized help I offer, then you can contact me by email, through Facebook, or Instagram. And I do post every single day on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn about GCSE and iGCSE for French and other languages too, how you can maximize your grades, how you can make learning as fun and efficient as possible, create a revision plan, and so on. So I recommend following me there. I, of course, also share my love of languages with people on social media and encourage people and motivate them to learn languages. I have many resources, including plenty of free ones available too for French GCSE and iGCSE. I have a Facebook group which is free to join for French GCSE and iGCSE students and their parents. And I do one-to-one classes, group classes, courses, and more. So if you'd like to know more about any of this, just get in touch.